And we're back. It's been a great day actually today. We've listened to some fantastic stuff, and we're going to close with the panel. And as we do that, I'm going to put my video on. Hopefully, if that works, there we go. Good. It's been a great day. And thank you for joining us, guys. Now I can only see 5 of you there, so there may be more, or 4 of you actually. There may be more in the background. So please speak up, jump in. If I don't address you directly, guys. So yeah, some great information. We've learned an awful lot. I think what I've learned is that things are changing dramatically, which I think we knew. I think we knew that. When we talk about the you know, the things like triage, deflection, when we talk about self-sufficiency, the more emphasis of enterprise service management, and certainly we've seen quite a bit about more proactive approach to managing the endpoint as well. So things are changing. I think if I looked 2 years ago about the way that we approached IT, it would be about best practice. It would be about adopting and adapting. It would be about how tools and vendors were supporting that best practice in their tool sets. Now, I don't think that's changed, because the day is still there and best practice is best practice. But I'm really interested to hear about what you guys are thinking in relation to, you know, things like AI. We've seen systems and intelligent systems coming to the forefront now, when just a year ago they were not pipe dreams, but they weren't talked they weren't talked about as often as we would maybe best practice, right? So what are you guys seeing when we talk about innovation? What are you guys seeing? What's on your roadmap, your technology roadmap as vendors? What are you working on, and what are you looking forward to? And I'll open that to anybody, guys.
Yeah, David, James here from Alemba. I think obviously throughout the course of the year, the landscape has dramatically changed. And as you just alluded to, what was important to best practice a year or so ago has evolved, and the landscape has changed to accommodate more from the remote working perspective, but also in terms of features and functions within the tool sets as well. So as we've seen throughout the vast majority of the demonstrations today, things like artificial intelligence, chatbots, virtual agents, social collaboration really has all come to the fore, because that's the way that customers, end users, you know, work in their day-to-day lives, not just in terms of using an enterprise service management application. It's how they browse the internet and so on and so forth. But also, obviously, reporting and dashboards is extremely important. You know, ITSM is no different to any other software on the market, whether it's ERP, finance. You know, at the end of the day, if you're putting data into it, it's primary that you can extract that data out of it into some tangible format. Also, resource management, project management, obviously things like flexibility in terms of licensing models, so that you can make the most of things like concurrent licenses, so people can get in and out with ease and not have to worry about, you know, being stringently aligned with named licenses and so on and so forth. So, and to conclude, I think there's quite a lot of things that are coming to the fore that potentially, as you mentioned, weren't right there a year or so ago, and because of what we're living through, and is very important to how our customers work.
Yeah, and it's really, I think it's quite exciting, John. Yeah, James, rather. I've spoken to people and talked about, this is actually, I know it sounds a bit sort of the wrong way around because of what's happened, but I think this is probably one of the most positive things that happened to IT service management constructively to drive innovation. I really think this is what we needed, because the conversation has changed. Anybody else, guys, about what it means, innovation, roadmaps, maybe what you're looking at, what you're considering right now as key things, as we've seen, but beyond that as well. Anybody else want to chip into that one?
Well, this is it, Perez. I wanted to bring up AI especially. As I go to all the different trade shows, like, you know, the Pink and the SDIs and service management world, a lot of the conversation that I hear is like, you know, how can I start addressing AI? How can I start addressing virtual agents? Everyone hears these buzzwords and they want to jump on board. Right. And they don't realize the work that it takes to actually start at the beginning stages. They feel that, hey, if I buy a chatbot, I'm ready to go.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of work that needs to be applied to even get at the most basic level. So when I talk to clients that are all excited about AI and chatbot, just take a step back and just think of what you really want to accomplish and provide to your end users before you make an investment in AI. So it just takes a little bit of homework, and it won't take years. Maybe a couple of months to actually outline exactly what you want to accomplish, and take baby steps, right? Don't try to take it all in one fell swoop. Take baby steps when you start thinking about introducing a virtual agent. That's the biggest thing I've been seeing lately.
Yeah. Yeah. Anybody else want to join in on that one?
Yeah, David, if I can just dovetail off of what Ed just said, we've seen an evolution over the past maybe 30 years, if not longer, and specific to service desk, just in terms of labor and the type of labor. It began back in I say the late 90s, where we were looking for onshore outsourcing, and then through labor arbitrage, we started looking at global outsourcing offshore, and now we're at a point in time where the labor arbitrage question, it becomes so compelling from a cost perspective, but also from a speed perspective. And with the introduction of AI and RPA, the ability to perform human tasks at the speed of digital is not only compelling from a speed standpoint, from a productivity standpoint, but certainly from a cost perspective. So there's been a paradigm shift in terms of how we are performing tasks. And that not only relates to just service desks. Think of robotics in general, what it's done to the manufacturing market. You think of AI as in terms of a reasoning engine. If you have Netflix or Amazon and you purchase something, they're making the next best action, suggesting to you, well, maybe you'd like to purchase this, or if you've watched this movie, this may be of some interest to you. There's reasoning behind AI that over the last maybe 2 years has accelerated so quickly that both in and out of IT, you're compelled to take advantage for that based on all the reasons I just mentioned.
Yeah, it's really interesting, actually. What I'm, as a spectator, what I'm interested in seeing is how organizations, the development organizations, the vendors change their proposition. And how's that going to work? How's that going to change? When we look at the Gartner, the quadrants, a lot of Gartner stuff today, how's that going to change those, how sort of independent people look at them? So it's really interesting times, I think, for a vendor. Let's maybe consider also as well, the functionality. We've seen a lot of no code and low code today. A lot of good stuff around that. Again, that's been there for a while, hasn't it, as capability? But all of a sudden, it's raised it's raised its profile. It's become now, much more of a requirement, maybe in conversations, I suppose. What kind of efficiencies have you seen in organizations where you've maybe deployed your tool sets? What kind of efficiencies have you seen in organizations realize through no code? So when we consider the speed to get stuff done, agility, the acceleration, what type of efficiencies have you seen firsthand?
One of the things I've noticed with our customers who've deployed a lot of this is almost like a step before the robotics is to get the process automated. And now we're starting to layer the robotics on top of that to make that process faster. But you still need the underlying tools to define the process, because ultimately computers still only do zeros and ones. They are not magic. Sometimes, the AI people make them look like magic, but what they don't tell you is behind the scenes that there's been millions of man hours of work behind it. And you still have to teach these things how to do things. And a lot of that teaching is really enabled by the low code process designers and things, because we can use them to feed the robots in an easy way and therefore still avoid getting into code.
Yeah, so that's fair. I think that's fair. We've seen that as well in the usage of data and knowledge in some organizations, some of the clever ones. Usually, I'll be honest, sort of the MSPs, they're using data in a different way, the way that they're tagging it, arranging it, segmenting it, to do what you just said, to build that on. And I think certainly if we were talking quantum computing, that would be an interesting place when we go from the ones and the zeros. So something in the middle, right? And I'm hoping I'll still be here when that happens, because that'll be incredible. But anyway, that's another.
Always remember that AI is just matrix. I'm a mathematician, so remember that AI is ultimately always just matrix multiplication.
It's true.
And when they talk about AI engines, they just mean fast ability to multiply.
And absolutely that decision
comes back to defining the metadata to do those calculations. And that's the thing, that you make sure your tool has that ability to provide the information that these robots need. But once you do that, it's very powerful, and then it does start to look like magic.
Yeah. And you're right. Again, I was speaking to somebody this week, and really we were talking about data science rather than IT. Service management, we talk data science, but it's the same thing, which is interesting. Anybody want to jump in on that one about the no-code efficiencies that you've seen in sort of no-code in deployments like that as well, guys?
Yeah, I'd like to just make a comment. We have a couple of very large Indian outsourcers as our customers, and they were also using other platforms in the past, legacy platforms of ServiceNow or other vendors, and they have proven that the fact that through a low-code, through a very flexible approach, through a easy customization, they went to market in a third of the time that they did in the past. So
wow.
It's and these are not my inventions. I mean, it's what they're telling us, and so that it has a benefit there to tune the things as you want them, onboard a customer, deploy the ITSM if it's outsourced or whatever in a third of the time. So that makes a big difference. And also with less effort, okay? You don't need highly specialized programmers and other specialized IT staff. It's an average administrator can do all this.
Yeah, I think it's more about the logic then, because one of the questions I was going to ask, well, what does that mean for skills? So if people have spent years developing and coming out of university and developing their careers in that kind of specialism, what does that mean for them? You know, it's really, really interesting. Sorry, I think I jumped in before somebody was going to carry on with that one.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the low code to no code and zero code configuration, it's obviously we focus really on the screen designs, the workflows, in terms of managing that from a customer perspective. So putting the powers in their hands to self-manage it and configure it to their strategic alignment going forward. But it's important to not underestimate integration with other tool sets as well. So obviously nowadays you don't have to be a developer to perform integrations. So for example, webhooks has come to the fore. So interacting with tool sets like DevOps, so things like Jira and Azure DevOps, so managing triggers in other tools, which then consume the data into Alemba Service Manager, for example, and then likewise back out of the solution. Again, that's all no code, so you don't have to be a developer in terms of API integration in order to put all of this in place. So I think that's not to be underestimated in terms of that interaction with other tool sets as well.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree, and we've not really we've talked a couple of times today about the integration, the wider integration potential of things like that. But yeah, I absolutely take your point. What about? And I asked this earlier. You know, we talked about the self-sufficiency and the culture of self-sufficiency in an organization. So if you look at the reactive nature of the service desk, I'm going to ring them, I'm going to shout a bit, I'm going to moan, then I'm going to sort of either have it fixed or my ticket will go into a black hole, and I'll ring back next week and moan again. So when you look at the move from an organization's culturally to move the user into more self-sufficient and shifting left some stuff, self-service, all the stuff that we've seen today. What have you seen in some of the better organizations that have managed to do that? Because we certainly see, even if you stick a self-service portal in many organizations, the majority of organizations, we still see adoption rates pre-COVID in single figures, less than 10%. There's one or two organizations that did it brilliantly, which in one case 60% of the end user population were using self-service and very, very well. What have you seen about the cultural shift, and how would you go around again, considering that and encouraging the end users into more of a self-service or self-serving environment?
I think the biggest thing in that is trust. In if you can build the trust that when you log that call, pick that thing on the service catalog, that it gets delivered, that will work. It's if you break that trust. So it's things, it's even things like we talk about chatbots, but even just launching chat, you must man it properly. Do not think it's a 0-man option. If you launch a chat system with no one to talk to, no one will use it twice. They'll go on and go, oh, it was rubbish. No one was there. I'll never use that again. I'll just phone. So you need to plan for that. So some of the things you can do is give better SLAs on things logged through the portal, so that you use a carrot as well as a stick to drive that behavior. And if they go, oh, I logged my issue on the portal and it got fixed much faster than when I phoned last time, they'll never phone again, because I don't think people want to phone.
Yeah. I think I'd agree with that. And a similar story actually with the organization I was talking about, with that 60%, a massive belief in what the technology could do. Anybody else want to come in on that one about self-service and the move to becoming more self-serving? Because we're in a situation now working from home where we're not in a sort of enterprise environment where that should probably become the norm rather than not. I don't know. What do you think about that, guys?
Well, I just wanted to post a statement here that we've seen the most successful organizations when they implement ITSM or other ESM disciplines, instead of focusing only on the process users, the service desk agents who wants 15 windows to categorize this, to document this, to do this and that, focus on what the end user wants, and really map their journey, and you will come up with some far simpler approaches, far, let's say, easy to consume type of experiences for the end users, and they will then be consumed and used really, instead of a too complicated portal or instead of a too complicated incident form that you have to fill in when you start a transaction with your service desk. So it's all about moving the shift from the process user to the end user.
Yeah, good.
I agree with Pierre. It's like what I've seen with clients is less is more, right? Don't overcomplicate my interface. White space is not bad, right? The less information that you provide to the end users, the more inviting it becomes to them. And start out like with just like with one organization we were working with on the East Coast here in the US is start out with one department and get wins within that department, and they'll be your champions to the other departments. So if you get a win in one area, right, you can now start, let's say, sharing that information to other departments. You'd be surprised if you get a champion in one department, how they can spread the rumor, right? And they'll say, hey, this is the way we should be going. Stop calling the help desk. Use this portal, right? It's not a bad thing.
Yeah, I would agree with Pierre and with Ed. And if I could just jump in, so that's really our philosophy here at ChoiceWorks, is to make the end user experience as pleasant as possible, so that we're really trying to reduce the number of calls required, right? Because we have we're trying to, I'll say, alleviate that analog to digital conversion of what is the issue, taking the digital issue and putting it into an analog conversation. We're instead getting in front of that and actually doing it digital to digital, using, per your earlier point, our AI engine to do remediations without the user even having to worry about that. While at the same time having a pretty simplistic chat bot that's not having someone sitting behind it, but instead understands your persona and your devices, can remediate some of your issues there as well.
Yeah, it's sorry, go on. I jumped in.
Yeah, David, it seems obvious to many of us on this call, but we've heard from clients now that we're in the midst of COVID and have been for a while, who often take for granted, let's say a panel like this, in terms of our knowledge of AT and how to use the tools that we're given, where if you think about it, the vast amount of the population of workers out there are accustomed to being behind a desk, potentially in an office building, and having resources readily available. So what clients are telling us now is they're seeing more calls to the desk about VPN connections. My Skype isn't working right. My browser is slow. or what's my printer? I've never had to hook up a printer before. So now they're seeing questions, they're fielding questions they really never had to, at least in this magnitude before. So we just assume, well, you know what, we can probably just have a discussion and maybe move left and remediate the issues ourselves. But pretty much the vast amount of the population may not know how to do that. So how do we take that problem and alleviate the majority of them? There will always be some, to make their life easier. There's nothing more, I'll tell you, disheartening when if you're at home and your laptop crashes and you have to wait a minimum of 24 hours. Now, you guys may have a backup, but what happens if you don't? You're literally out of work for 24 hours. So your productivity has gone down to zero. Where in the past, a desk side support person may come up and said, here's a loaner, let me go re-image your machine and I'll be back in a half hour.
And we talk about paradigm shifts. That is a massive shift, isn't it? The ability not to have local intelligent hands, desktop. I mean, it's a massive shift. So again, I think what we've seen today, I think, around the blending of technology and the human, the augmenting, right? I've been waiting for this for about 2 or 3 years, to be honest. We've been talking about orchestration, augmentation for a while now, and it's really interesting to see it come, I think, quicker to the fore because of COVID. Really, really interesting. So the question for me around that is, how do you think the premise of artificial intelligence and intelligent platforms, how do you think that's going to change the way that the service desk traditionally supports end users? What are we going to see over the next 2 years, 2 years, and how the service desk adapts to this new environment with these new intelligent platforms and tools?
I think. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I know I was going to say, to tie it back to your one of the questions you asked before that we didn't answer, which was around skills. I think in the service desk world, we're going to have to learn, some of how you program chatbots. When you write a knowledge article, how do you write the instructions for chatbots to pick up that article properly, etc. Yeah. So we're going to have to learn AI and our knowledge. And if there's anyone watching today that's still at university, then always do mathematics. You will always have a job because someone has to build the robots. So always be on that side of it. So, but I think a lot of the tasks will therefore become automated. But what you want to do is then have your skill set add more value to your organization by being the person effectively that runs the robots. Yeah. Because obviously the value of the task performed by the robots is going to go down. It's going to become cheaper per transaction. That's the whole point.
And do you know what? We had a conversation in the last panel where I sort of said, what does that mean for the service desk? And my nirvana is to see those skills be developed in the desk. To some of the more complex technical skills to create a sort of a full stack service desk engineer. Right, somebody who could do an awful lot of stuff. Now that's a big jump, right? But I'm hoping that becomes a reality because you bring the service closer to the end user. It doesn't need to go into a queue to address it. With the augmentation of this technology and new skills, we're going to bring it even closer, and the service desk will become more of that full stack thing. That's what my nirvana. Anybody else want to jump in on that? How they think the service desk is going to change, or what we need to change to make the most of this?
I think one John had stated flexibility. Yeah, go ahead. Okay, so one aspect is the flexibility to adapt to any kind of situations, and I think COVID was a great lesson that I don't know who gave the example that you could get a laptop replaced immediately in the past. Now it takes you 24 hours until it gets shipped to you. This flexibility forced the service desk to build some new services, build some integrations into DHL or whatever other shipping components. So the flexibility and adaptability is the most important word here, because there are going to be new services, new artificial technologies, new interfaces people like to use. And it's at the kernel, the incident is always going to be an incident, but how you interact with this incident and how you process the incident is going to change every day. And so that's why it goes a little bit back into the no-code story. You need to adapt these processes to follow the trends, or be even ahead of the demand from the business. So, and there artificial intelligence will help, well, around categorization, trend analysis, normalization, anomaly detection, tons of implementation possibilities, not only in the transaction between end user and the service desk.
And I was thinking earlier actually about the impact on problem management as well. Again, this could completely change that sort of manual, intervention in problem management from more technical people, but and using that as a practice. I mean, this technology could really revolutionize that. I think. Anybody else want to? We haven't got a lot of time left. Probably we're almost closed. But anybody else just want to close on that point? Anybody else want to make a point on the same question?
Yeah, I'll just make one final point, David, and it's along the lines of what John was saying before. Our intent as an organization it's simple. It's to reduce the amount of interaction or creation of tickets to the service desk using AI. Mm-hmm. We talked about the interaction between the user, the end user, and the service desk. Our goal is to eliminate the vast majority of that interaction and have the problems resolved remotely at the end user, utilizing support bot and AI reasoning engine. So if you think about it along those lines, and we're constantly developing use cases, even if we can eliminate 50% or 60% of that interaction, that human intervention, we've made the end user more productive. Certainly experience is better. The cost has been decreased. The service desk agent can then adapt to maybe new and more challenging types of issues to remediate, different skill set. That is our goal at ChoiceWorks, to remove the human intervention from resolving issues, essentially put.
Good. Gentlemen, it's been a pleasure to have some time with you to go through this. It's been a brilliant day actually all around. So thank you very much indeed. We're going to close this now. And before we do that, I'm just going to say some thank yous if I could. A long day, a brilliant day. Thank you to everybody who's been part of it. Thank you to our speakers, our event partners for joining us today and sharing their thoughts. And also thank you to Holly and to Zoe and SCI for organising and managing today's event, and Emma as well, who jumped in. And finally, thank you to everybody who's listened today. It's been a really cool day, actually. So thank you for taking the time out to listen to us today. And we'll hope you'll join us again next time. So thank you very much. Good luck and good night. Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.